Jimmy Johnson, another great head coach of the 1990s. Hey everybody, so now I'm making another football card video of, Jimmy Johnson. Another great football coach, head coach of the 1990s, the best decade of football. Okay, so I make these videos because they bring back a lot of memories, NFL, these football cards. Here's a 1989 Pro set, which is one of my favorite sets. And this is graded a perfect 10. It's a Gem 10. Now, I didn't buy this card in 1989. I bought it when it was a Gem 10. Because I didn't have any Jimmy Johnson football cards, because there aren't many. But when I saw this graded as a Gem 10 years ago, then I bought it. So, all right, so let's talk about my memories and Jimmy Johnson. Now, he's been a head coach in college before the NFL, and I vaguely remember him in the 1980s as the head coach of the Miami Hurricanes. I do have some memories of him in the 1980s, but mostly college football for me in the 1980s was the USC Trojans. I just watched them. And sometimes Notre Dame, but I do remember, I have memories of the Miami Hurricanes and how powerful they were, and Jimmy Johnson was the head coach of them. What else can I tell you about him? Now, I know he won the national championship with the Miami Hurricanes. I do remember that. And then after that, he became the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And I do remember in the late 80s, I do remember this happening. Jerry Jones bought the Dallas Cowboys and fired the legend Tom Landry. I do remember that. And that was shocking because Tom Landry, he's a legend, an NFL legend, an NFL icon, and he just got fired from the Dallas Cowboys. That was crazy. And I remember that. It made all the news. And then he was replaced by Jimmy Johnson, which I thought was just really crazy. How do you fire Tom Landry? And then you hire this coach who has no NFL experience. But it is what it is. And look what happened. The Cowboys were terrible. The first season or the first two seasons with Jimmy Johnson, they went like 1-15 with Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin. And then they had a slightly better season after that. But then they got rid of Herschel Walker, and the rest is history. Here comes all the drafts, draft picks, Emmitt Smith, and so on. Then Jimmy Johnson takes him to the Super Bowl twice, wins twice. So, can't argue with that. And so I have a lot of memories of Jimmy Johnson in the late 80s and early 90s. Because that's when I was like, in the 80s, I was still, I was into football and still kind of, collecting cards and all that kind of stuff. But in the 90s, that's when I was, really into football, like a religion, and collecting all kinds of football cards. And so I have a lot of memories of Jimmy Johnson, for sure. And then what else? After the Cowboys, he went to the Miami Dolphins. That's right. And I watched a lot of Miami Dolphins games because they were in the same division as the Patriots. So I would see Jimmy Johnson and the Dolphins, Dan Marino, against, Drew Bledsoe and the Pats. So I did watch Jimmy Johnson and the Dolphins a few times. And then after that, he retired, became a football analyst for Fox Sports, And so I have a lot of memories of him being an analyst. Um, like I said, another great head coach of the 1990s. You know, that Cowboy dynasty in the early 90s. How about them Cowboys?